When you've introduced storytelling frameworks,
Right.
teams communicate better. How do you strike that balance? I mean, between creativity and clarity.
Between clarity and creativity, clarity wins. Focusing on clarity first and then making sure you add a layer of creativity to it is the way to win the heart of the audience. 86% of B2B buyers start with three brands or two brands from day one.
Today on Marketing Growth Fuel, we're joined by Aravinda Billavara, Senior Director of Integrated Marketing at Procore Technologies, and a go-to expert in scaling B2B marketing that actually drives revenue. He's led full funnel strategies across global markets, turning complex products into clear, compelling growth stories. At Procore, he's building demand engines that have measurable impact. Let's get started. Welcome back to Marketing Growth Fuel, the podcast where we go beyond funnels and frameworks to uncover the people and purpose behind great marketing. Today's guest is a seasoned B2B marketer, a growth strategist, and a builder of high performance marketing engines across global markets. Welcome to the show, Arvinda.
Thank you, Vikram. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Let's start with something that every B2B marketing leader faces today. How do you make your product just not relevant, but also meaningful to the buyer? And that's a lot more complex, I would say, when you are working across industries with unique challenges. Then there is stakeholder chains, then there's buyer cycles, and in many ways, you've had the front row seat to this shift, which is about showcasing what the product does to why it actually matters. What I would love to understand is when you're working on a product or industry messaging, what's the first thing you look for to avoid sounding generic or maybe a one size fits all?
Got it. Great question, Vikram. I think the genesis of all marketing, I would say. So I would say starts with the audience. So who's the audience you're dealing with? Is that an enterprise audience, an SMB audience? It also is which industry it belongs. So it all starts with the audience and then the problem which they are facing. So what is the problem the audience is trying to solve?
Right.
And then how do we weave a story which positions them as the hero and us as the guide or the solution provider as the guide? So when we focus our efforts on what they're trying to solve, how are they trying to solve it today? Because it's not, in many cases, they are trying to do something today to solve it, but they're not able to solve it. What is it that we are offering which is going to make their lives better? Basically, we are selling transformation to the audience. So it starts with the audience, the problem they're facing, we as the guide, how can we solve that, transform them? And that's the story we need to be telling. And when we look at the audience, it also dives into the types of audiences as well. So are the audience geographically based? Is there specific nuance to the geography? Or is this particular segment, if it's an SMB, is there a buying cycle which is shorter? Or if it's an enterprise, is there a longer buying cycle? Who are the people involved in the buying? Who are the kind of personas involved? So when all these are addressed, you then start to become very specific in your messaging, which is suitable for that audience and that persona. So and then you weave it into a story. All of this needs to be combined together, and that what makes the messaging relevant to that audience.
What I'm understanding is that, when, or rather, I would say B2B buyers today are expecting brands to understand their world, right? It's not just talk about features, try and make it more relevant to them. And I think this is also in line with a recent report that I'd read. This report was by, I think, Six Sense. That said that about 72% of the marketers today, are more likely to engage with brands who try and bring in more perspectives, who are ready to kind of give more information, teach rather than tell.
Correct.
And I think that kind of naturally brings me, to storytelling. Right now, you've championed the use So the idea of using frameworks to bring in structure and clarity to B2B stories. But I think there's that thin line or fine line, I would say, between being creative and staying clear, especially when the stakes are high and audiences are senior.
Hmm.
So when you've introduced storytelling frameworks to
Right.
help teams communicate better, how do you strike that balance? I mean, between creativity and clarity.
Got it. Yeah. Again, a good question. I would focus more on clarity.
Hmm.
I would focus more on clarity. And there's a reason for that. When we look at telling a story or trying to teach someone or educate someone, in this case, the audience, companies or marketeers come from a knowledge which is, if you take a scale of 0 to 10, the information which they have and what they want to present is somewhere in the scale of 8 or 9,
Hmm.
whereas the understanding for the audience needs to be in the scale of 3 or 4.
Hmm.
So the more clarity we bring, the more simpler we bring the messaging to the audience, the easier to understand. So between clarity and creativity, clarity wins. You buy what you understand. You may enjoy, which is something which is creative, but if it's not clear, you just enjoy it and that's the end of the story. So I've seen countless examples where there are, I would say, cute or funny or I would say ways of presenting information where there's a high creativity, but in the end, the message is lost. Uh, what were they trying to communicate or what the message was is totally lost. So there's probably an entertainment factor,
Yeah.
but not an understanding factor. So focusing on clarity first and then making sure you add a layer of creativity to it is the way to win the heart of the audience.
And if you don't mind me asking, have you been in positions where you've had to dial back on the creativity uh, to avoid some sort of a misalignment with maybe the buyer who's far more technical on the other hand? Any personal references?
I think whether the buying team is either business oriented or technical oriented, both of them would need clarity of understanding. Simpler the message, the easier.
Hmm.
It is getting that first stage of attention, right? So, for example, in a recent study by LinkedIn with, I think it was a Bain
Yeah.
Institute, where they talk about 86% of B2B buyers start with three brands or two brands from day one,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
and
remember.
they
I remember.
understand that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
so if you create confusion and if you're not clear, you lose that space in the mind of the buyer, whether it's technical or business. So being clear, being present, and being relevant, all of these are important in order to make a mark on the buying journey.
But don't you think, or rather, I'd say, especially when you step into legacy industries like construction and energy, or for that matter, manufacturing, where buyers are far more analytical, they're more risk conscious,
Hmm.
and they are driven by very functional metrics. How do you balance storytelling with functional proof?
Got it. So it's all about relevance, and then who is on a journey similar to me?
Got it.
Is it a contractor? Is it a owner? And do I have a story where I showcase a hero's journey, where a similar audience is taking that journey, and then you can think of it as a case study where the case study presents the audience as the hero
Yeah.
and the company as the guide. And then at the end of the story, there's a transformation, and then there are metrics about this is how they save time in terms of hours and days and months. This is how much dollars they saved in terms of cost savings. These are the ways by how they avoided safety issues or
Hmm.
address those issues. So the proof point is not only the story, but also the outcomes and the metrics of what the customer achieved at the end of the story. So it has to be quantified that this is the benefit a person got or a company got. Yeah.
And talking about the quantification,
Mhm.
so one way we could look at it, there could be benchmarks, there could be some sort of a certification, or you could talk about cost savings, or there are the other types of proofs, right? So there could be like uptime stats, or there could be compliance. Are there any specific that resonate a lot more in the industries that you're marketing to?
I think it's a no-brainer actually. It's time tested. It is, am I finishing my projects on time? Am I finishing my projects within the budget? And have I made sure that safety and regulations are taken care of? Am I out of the news? So
Hmm.
these are pretty relevant, and whatever functions, roles, they revolve around these. And anything which is relevant, where we make it simpler and easier for them to understand how they can achieve this, that's gold mine. And
Yeah.
there's also another angle to that. Customers want to be treated with a special white glove. What does it mean? If I'm in India, I would like to know stories of customers in India who have used and solved the problems. Yes, I may read a story which is in the US, but the conditions in which I work in, the regulations, the guidelines, the processes may be different. So I would look for stories which are similar to me, and
Hmm.
that would what would resonate to me. I might admire a story where a certain country or a certain project was iconic, and it created a mark, but I have day-to-day things to do, and is this solution going to solve the problem which I'm facing? And is it similar to the working condition I'm in, similar to the environment I'm in, similar to the uh, difficulties I face? So making it relevant and making the story relevant also resonates in the marketing side.
I think that's an interesting insight. Uh, Arvind, one of the things that's also happening is, and specifically in 2025,
Mhm.
uh, that obviously AI has taken over a lot of marketing. B2B demand generation is
Right.
evolving from being isolated to campaigns. They're becoming more integrated. I think businesses are now saying that we want scalable demand engines, that have consistent pipeline growth. uh, in fact, I think I don't remember, I think it was a Forrester study that said about 68% of B2B marketers are prioritizing scalable demand programs as against one off. And
Hmm.
if you've really looked at the B2B tech marketing industry for the longest time, uh, a lot of businesses rely on one off campaigns, for the better part of it. And that's changing, right? So in 2025, what do you think, how does a well oiled demand engine that's scalable look like,
Got it. Yeah.
especially when you're doing this across geographies and you're doing this across personas?
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit up on a very important question there, where how do we scale? It starts again with the basics, which is what are the business priorities? How do we align with sales? So, alignment with sales becomes very important.
Right.
So, pipeline generation and business is a team effort. It's not just a marketing effort or a sales effort, it's a team effort. So,
Yeah.
I would start by owning and sharing the business goals with the sales team. So,
So
once that is clear, then it's a question of what are the campaigns which we need to run in order to generate the business. Number two.
hmm.
The third is how do we take those campaigns and localize it for the regions or the audiences we are going after? So, building a scalable model does not mean we have to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel, but you can take the problems and the issues being faced and then localize it to the relevant audiences. So, that's how one starts to build a scalable model. Then the question you asked about is AI.
Hmm.
How does AI help? I think it's something which marketeers are trying to figure out. I would say, how does it help? There are of course scrappy ways of doing it. You can use the Gen AI to upload some of your content, ask it for creative solutions, but there are privacy issues. Can you upload your message house or your messaging model into open channels? So there are issues like that. However, I would say um, AI agents, which are coming up with some of the um, providers, are certainly going to be very helpful, where we are able to contain the IP of the company within the company, but also leverage it to develop messaging. So, building a scalable AI team will be certainly an emphasis for marketeers going forward.
And on that that note, do you think marketers should be worried about their jobs?
I think yes and a no. Uh, when I say yes and a no, what I mean is if I, as a marketeer, am embracing AI versus someone who's not embracing AI, there's a big difference. So if I'm embracing AI, then I'm being more productive, I'm being more creative, and I'm being more effective. And today, the mantra is how are you more effective?
Earlier, I think just before this question, you touched upon, how there should be alignment between, sales and marketing, and that's an age-old challenge.
Yes,
Obviously, it's evolved a little. Like we've moved away from, or at least has moved away from lead versus pipeline, and it's now moved towards maybe shared interests and mutual trust in many ways. So how do you ensure that marketing and sales are aligned quarter by quarter? You know, especially when you're working across geographies and personas. I mean, how does one go about that?
sure. I think ultimately we are all human beings, so it starts with trust. So whether it's sales or other marketing teams, cross-functional teams, it starts with trust. So building trust becomes important. So even before we dive into how are we going to create pipeline, what are the different aspects we do, I think understanding the other human being we are working with is
Hmm.
an important starting point. Understanding how they work, getting to know them personally, building the trust. And I call it a framework for a high performing team. Building trust becomes an important point. The second is once the trust is established, how are we able to have discussions where it's not personal but focused on the business, and there is a debate, there's a discussion, and we're able to have that open discussion. Third is once that is done, how do we commit to the results? How do we hold each other accountable for the results? Once we start to hold each other accountable for the results, we are then able to achieve those results. So building that high performing team framework is the foundation of any pipeline generation or committing and engaging with sales. As we do that parallelly, we engage with sales on what are the business priorities, where are we going after, who's the audience, how do we then break it down by quarter, by month, and then I would call it a 45-day plan, because what you do in the first 45 days is going to be very important for that quarter. And having that cadence of 45-day fast start
Hmm.
for every quarter helps. I think the other point is how do we follow through on the plan? How do we follow through in the execution, right? So it's not a end of the quarter. We get together and do just a QBR and forget about it. I would say it would be a weekly engagement on how the pipeline is doing, what's going on, a bi-weekly engagement on how the overall campaigns are functioning. Is there any tweaks we need to do? A monthly look back and a monthly look ahead of what we have done and how we need to do. So I think all of them are important and play a role because the business environment today is very fast changing, and we need to be nimble and agile. At the end of one quarter, we may see that the business environment has changed. A certain acquisition has changed the entire marketplace, or there's a
Absolutely.
certain technology which has come in and disrupted. So marketers need to be very nimble, very agile, and then work very closely with sales to achieve the business goals.
And what do you think? Or how does technology play a role? In bringing the alignment between sales and marketing.
I would say first is the alignment on the business goals.
Correct.
Second is in terms of measurement of how we are performing. So I think in that sense, technology gives some visibility to how the campaigns are performing. Where are we? Which channels are performing versus which are not? And then how are we totally aligning both the pipeline goals and the lead generation or demand generation goals? I think technology can bring visibility to that. At the same time, bad processes and bad collaboration is not going to be solved by technology.
So now let's shift to something. I think every marketer is a little obsessed with these days, and I think sales too as well. That's essentially, how do you speed up the buyer's journey?
Mhm.
I'm sure you have some tricks up your sleeve. You've done this for almost more than a couple of decades now. Um, uh, so while everyone talks about shortening the buyer's journey, what are one or two practical tips that have worked for you, or you think that get you the results.
Yeah. Again, I think rather than talk about shortening the buyer journey, I would rather say how do you make it easy for the buyer to find you,
Okay.
to
Yeah, that's
select
one
you,
good.
to
Hmm.
find you and select you. And the reason it's called a buyer's journey is because buyers control the journey. It's not a seller's journey, it's a buyer's journey. So the buyers control the journey. And when we look at a buyer's journey, there are certain trigger events which happen which make the buyer buy.
Yes.
So it could be examples, it could be a new executive has come in and they want to make some changes and they have new projects to do, or there's a new project which has landed up on the table for the company. So there are trigger points which make the customer to buy. And the question then is, are you on the top three for consideration? Are you on the top one for consideration when they're ready to buy? So it's
Yeah.
making it easy so that they can find you. And what that means is, again, going back to the research, how are you educating them? How are you providing content where they can find it easily about you? And how are you building trust by giving content which is relevant to them? I think that's the first point. The second would be how to be on top of mind through every channel they go and search for information. Today, by the time a customer or a prospect comes, they have done 85% of the research. They've already decided whom they want to go with based on the information they have. They are coming for the remaining 50% to find out about commercials and other information which they want to. So making sure that we provide information in content easy to find, relevant, I think is the most important, which is making it easy for them to find you.
Talking about the changes that are happening in the buyer's journey,
Mhm.
uh, obviously, like you mentioned, there are so many channels that have come up now. I think earlier we had just a couple of channels, right? uh, but then, one of the things that I've been thinking of late, and I've had multiple conversations with, is the funnel that we've tried and tested for the longest time evolving.
Mhm.
Because the new age marketers are saying that that funnel is irrelevant in today's world. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a very interesting thinking process here. And I've gone through several iterations of this evolution of this, whether it's a funnel or it's a circle or it's an inverted funnel.
Yeah, that's the one
Uh,
I've been referring to nowadays.
and then whether we call the inverted funnel a bow tie, something which a recent information I gathered through a course by Winning by Design is how do SaaS companies uh, operate their business, and they call it the bow tie model. And what it means is people just don't buy. So you look at funnel as the stage when you're attracting, you're making them to buy. But what about retention and renewals? Because the business grows when your renewals grow. There's only so much you can acquire in terms of new logos or new customers. You have to retain the customer, you have to grow them, you have to cross sell, upsell. So I would view it as a bow tie model where marketing plays a close role with sales and then customer success. So it's a tri-party team effort where we work with both sales and customer success, not only to acquire customers but also to retain and grow the customers. So I would call it a bow tie model where marketing plays a role across the life cycle here.
No, I'm sure there is a lot more frameworks out there. I think this is one we'd probably have our audiences look into as well. And moving on a little, so the way I look at it, marketing has more access to tools than it ever had in its lifetime.
Hmm.
Every week there is a new marketing tool out there which can essentially do everything that you wanted to do, and maybe you are using a lot no more number of tools than before, right? Uh, but this kind of is also very different when you bring into the regional mix. When you're trying to launch into new markets, you're trying to tailor messages. You have its own sets of challenges, right? So you've led marketing across APAC, uh, EMEA, and obviously North America. uh, but then I'd love to understand, what's your approach when you are uh, trying to enter new regions or markets, how do you balance these, bringing these smarter tools, and then the whole local relevance, and trying to be consistent across all of them?
Got it. Yeah. I would break down the question into two pieces. One is the use of tools and then entry into new markets, right? I'll break it down in two pieces here.
Fantastic.
When it comes to tools, I think the key question is what is the insight these tools bring to the market here? So it's not the number of tools, but together, are they giving me insights? Is it giving my team insights so that they can action upon? Today, data, there's an overflow of data. There's only so much limited time and mind space. Also, there's only so much you can learn about new tools. So the answer is, what tools I have, will it give me the insights and actionable insights so that I can improve upon my marketing? That's number one.
Hmm.
When it comes to entry into new markets, it's a question of business strategy, which is how are we going to enter this market space? Are we going in all alone? Are we going in with partners? So it's a business strategy. I would say entry into any new market should be led by marketing. Marketing needs to go in, lead, create the landing space so that sales can come in and then start to grow the market. An example would be if you need to, for example, get into a new country, can we start to work around with digital tools, website, SEO of the website, maybe podcasts like what you're doing, webinars. So start to reach out, and then the challenge of data acquisition comes in. Are we reaching the right audiences? Are the tools giving me access to new contact data? Are they giving me insights about what they're consuming and what they are interested in? um, am I giving an audience which is ready to buy, or at least showing a tendency of buying, and then bring it to sales? So am I making it easy for sales also to go and approach? So I think tools which support that would be helpful. And since it's a question of tools related to marketing, not tools which are to be used by the customer, so that's the that so I'm answering your question from that context.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the questions that I'd love to ask you is that when businesses or organizations, are trying to get into specific regions, through
Mhm.
marketing-led initiatives, uh, do you think sometimes they have to unlearn a practice, that they had implemented, maybe globally, and it just didn't land in a specific region? Does that happen?
I would say it's a very common occurrence because we go with certain assumptions that what worked in one market is going to work for another market. We might think that what worked in Germany may work for France, um, and what worked in UK may work for maybe Australia. It doesn't work that way. One has to look at the audience, the practices of the audience, where they consume the information, how do they reach out to what information they need, and then, for example, in one region, they may be more interested in attending a webinar versus physical event. They may want to come to a physical event. In some regions, getting to know people is more important before you can start any business transaction or even meet the C-level executive. In fact, I don't remember the name of the study. It talks about how it's easier to meet C-level executives in the US versus in Europe. In Europe, you need a lot more introduction before you meet the C-level, whereas in the US, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and then have a conversation with them. They're more than happy to have a chat with you. So there are differences in different countries. Business practices change. So I think studying the market, studying the audience, and then approaching marketing is going to be the one which will yield results.
I was having an interesting conversation with another fellow marketer in one of our previous podcasts, where he kind of really pointed out that, maybe some regions are more open to, like you said, a specific type of communication. So it could so happen that they prefer emails more than, digital outreaches on social media, or maybe telecalling, channels, if that's if that's allowed in those specific regions.
Yeah,
I completely agree. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are also cases where you can reach out to through WhatsApp in some countries. You can it's acceptable to reach out for business customers through WhatsApp, whereas in some other places it's considered no go. You shouldn't be reaching out through WhatsApp. You have to go through the formal channels. Um, so yeah, so we need to study
I think the
those things.
cultural layer is so powerful, that even if you know even if there's a small misstep, it can just really lead to catastrophic results, buyer drop offs, or maybe even brand dilution for that matter. Now, when you're working across geographies and you're looking at localization and you're managing teams, uh, in your experience, how do you keep everyone aligned and at the same time, making sure that they're moving really fast? uh, do you have any specific rituals, because it can be very tricky?
It is. I think it's a formula which keeps changing. Um, when you look at any business, there's always a churn in the team. So it's an ideal situation to think that you'll have a group of people, and it's the same throughout the years. There are new people coming in, business change. Um, every year, there's probably a change in the sales team. There's structures change. The go-to-market changes. So I would say continuous iteration is required for this process. However, just backing up here, I think what first is having clarity on what the plan is. What is the go-to-market plan? What's the plan for the year? What's the plan for the quarter?
Hmm.
Having a regular update with the team on, are we on the plan? Are we tracing on the plan? Are we working on the plan? Is it giving results? Yes or no? What are the changes we are seeing? Do we need to incorporate those changes into the plan? Being nimble here, and that means having a team which has diversity in its thought process. Very important. So it's very important to have higher people, higher team members who have diversity in their thought processes, experiences, and that yields a lot of results because each of these, and then enabling them to contribute. So it's also a team effort where everyone has a voice. They have a share of the voice, and if they don't, you encourage them to have a share of the voice, having them to contribute. So hearing those diversity of thought processes, experience also comes in. What worked, what didn't work. Testing also comes in. So testing new things. If it fails, fail fast and move on. So all
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
this. So it has to, there's no one fixed set of it, but rather having multiple thought processes, multiple test out of what is working or not working, and then sticking to the plan. Having a plan and sticking to a plan, and then modifying the plan as we go forward. I think all of that is important to be nimble and agile.
And I love that. I mean, because I think at the end of the day, uh, I think leading regional marketing at scale, or leading marketing teams globally, is just not about launching campaigns. I think it's about building systems that empower people. You respect cultures, and you still try to move the business forward. And I think that's what I've taken away from this conversation, is
Yes.
that you need precision, but at the same time, like you said, you need autonomy to go hand in hand. Uh, and while you're doing all of this, you have to ensure that the strategy is built right.
And stick to the strategy. Otherwise, if the strategy changes every month, it's not a strategy. So you have to have a strategy. If it's for the year, it's for the year. There can be small variations to that. And then each of the regions have their nuances to the plan, and we need to incorporate nuances to the plan. So yeah, testing is very important. I think we should test out some regions. We would come and say we have done this in the past. This doesn't work. Okay, 2 years, 3 years have changed. For example, an interesting example is a certain implementation of a chat tool. 2 years ago, it was implemented, it failed, it didn't work. 2 years now, things have changed. AI is now playing a huge role in chat tools. You have AI SDR. So, st- uh, 2 years ago, you needed a human to operate a chat tool behind it, but now you can have an AI operate almost independently to a certain extent before it passes on to a human being. So, things have moved. So, It's very important to have that context as well as to what work didn't work at a certain point in time doesn't mean that it'll not work again. So one has to be constantly evolving in the thinking process.
So now, before we wrap up, Arvinda, let's shift gears. So obviously, we talked about frameworks, we talked about funnels, we talked about strategy. Uh, so I think it's only fair that we test your reflexes a little bit as well. So we're going to go for a lightning round we call this or that, the marketing mashup.
Got it.
So I'm going to quickly toss a few rapid fire choices your way. You don't have to overthink. Just your first instinct. Whenever you're ready, just let me go know, and I'll go for it.
All right. I'm not going to be in trouble, right?
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, brand building or pipeline building?
Brand building first.
AI tools for marketing or old school creativity sessions?
Old school creative sessions. Yes.
Leading a small, scrappy team or managing a big, well funded team?
Managing a small scrappy team anytime.
Virtual meetings or live brainstorming sessions?
Live brainstorming sessions. Yes.
Fast growth with few mistakes or slow and steady wins?
Fast growth with few mistakes. Yeah.
Product led growth or sales assisted GTM?
Product led growth. Yep.
One global campaign or 10 localized ones?
10 localized ones. Yeah.
Crisis communications, speak fast or wait and calibrate?
Wait and calibrate.
Launching with a bang or soft launches?
Soft launches. Yeah.
And I think the final one I'm going to go for is going to be personalized email campaigns or community led marketing.
Community led marketing. Yeah.
All right. So there's one last, we what we call it as the wild card question.
All right.
If you were dropped into any global SaaS company, Mission Impossible style, to fix one go-to-market launch in 30 days, which company would you choose, and what's the first thing that you would do?
I don't know. That's a tricky question. Probably drop me into OpenAI, and I think get into OpenAI and make sure the strategy is right. I think you recently heard about them. They are again going back into being a non-profit company again. So
Yes.
stick to a plan. Be on a plan. Um, yeah, is what I would advocate for.
So, Arvinda, this has been such a sharp and insightful conversation. Um Thank you for sharing your perspectives on everything. So, right from building scalable demand engines, to regional marketing and driving alignment across sales and marketing teams. I think there are a lot of insights that our audiences would take away from here. We are so glad you joined us today, and thank you so much once again. I really appreciate this. Any parting words?
Well, Vikram, thank you very much for inviting me for this podcast. Really enjoyed this. I think for marketeers, it's an exciting world out there. Not to be blinded by the shiny tools, but make sure the fundamentals are right, then make sure the process are right, and then add the technology on the top of it. Things will set its due course.
Fantastic. Thank you once again, Arvinda.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.